Dear friends, welcome to this week's virtual Drasha. This week we have the incredible privilege of Parshas Vayechi and Emir Hashem conclude Sefer Bereshis, the book of Genesis. And when we look at the last pasuk, the last verse in this week's parsha, in Sefer Bereshis, the Torah says, "Vayamos Yosef ben Mea ve'eser shanim." Yosef died at the age of 110. Vayachantuo, so they embalmed him. Vayisem ba'aron b'Mitzrayim. They placed him in a casket in Egypt. So there's an interesting statement of Tosas. Tosas in the end of Maseches Nida espouses a principle, a klal. And the klal is the mesaimin betov. That in general, whenever you close out a particular book of the Torah, we try to end off with something good, something positive. And so the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Zecher Tzaddik V'Kol Racha, asks an interesting question. He says, if that really is the guiding light principle, that a Chumash always tries to close off, right, or a book of Tanakh always tries to close out with some type of good news, something positive, then why does Sefer Bereshis end with the death of Yosef? Remember, the death of Yosef was tragic on many levels. First of all, relatively speaking, Yosef died young, when you compare him to his father, to his grandfather, to his great-grandfather. And also remember, with the death of Yosef begins the book of Exodus, Sefer Shmos, which then launches into the entire narrative of Egyptian servitude. The Egyptians did not do anything negative to the Jews when Yosef was still alive. So the death of Yosef really, it's not just tragic because of the loss of a great man, but also ushers in a very difficult chapter for our people. So why does Sefer Bereshis end with the death of Yosef? So in order to answer this question, the Rebbe asks really a different question. The Rebbe says, it's interesting, and this question is actually asked by a number of the Mefarshim. Why wasn't Yosef buried in Eretz Yisrael? Avram is buried in Ma'aseh Machpelah, Yitzchak is buried in Ma'aseh Machpelah, Yaakov is buried in Ma'aseh Machpelah, right? All of the matriarchs and patriarchs, save Rachel Imenu, are all buried in Hebron, in the cave of the patriarchs, Ma'aseh Machpelah, and Yosef is buried in Egypt. So ask the Rebbe, why wasn't Yosef buried in Mitzrayim? So let's think, he died in Egypt. Okay, Yaakov also died in Egypt. But Yaakov, realizing that he was going to die in Egypt, gave explicit instructions to his children, to his family, take me back up to Canaan, take me back to Eretz Yisrael, bury me in Ma'aseh Machpelah. So why wasn't Yosef buried in Eretz Yisrael? So the truth is, the Gemara Maseches Sota happens to have an approach to this. And the Gemara talks about the idea that the Egyptians did not allow the release of Yosef's body. They felt that Yosef was such a source of blessing for Egypt, for the entire country. They wanted to keep his remains in Egypt. And in fact, the Gemara points out that they put him in a lead coffin and they buried him on the bottom of the Nile River, because they felt that Yosef was such a source of bracha. The Nile is the primary water source for Egypt. So put Yosef into the Nile, it's like a winning combination. It'll be bracha for Egypt. Okay, so that's the explanation of the Gemara. But Lubavitcher Rebbe, Zecher Tzaddik V'Kol Racha, says something so amazing. And the Rebbe writes as follows. He says, Sha'atam lozeh shenikbar Yosef b'Mitzrayim v'lo b'Eretz Yisrael. Why was Yosef buried in Egypt and not in Eretz Yisrael? Ki Yaakov amar Yosef. The Rebbe quotes this idea that Yaakov Avinu said to Yosef, Ata tzarich shatagein alehem. Yaakov told Yosef something, and he said, Yosef, there are going to be difficult times ahead for our family. There are going to be difficult times ahead for our future, for our nation. Yosef, you need to stay in Egypt. Because if you're here, literally translate, because Yosef, you will be able to draw down for them divine favor, divine compassion while they are still in exile. And you will travel with them through the desert and come back with them to the promised land. What the Rebbe is saying is something amazing. Yaakov Avinu told Yosef, when you die, you need to stay in Egypt. Because your presence, the presence of your remains, the knowledge that Yosef HaTzadik is still here with us in Egypt, Yaakov said, will give the Jewish people staying power, strength, in order to be able to endure, in order to be able to weather through the difficult storm which lay ahead. Yaakov Avinu told Yosef, I need you to give up burial in Eretz Yisrael. For now, remember again, we know the end of the story. Yosef is taken with the Jewish people when they leave Egypt, and he's reburied in Shechem. So Yosef ultimately finds his resting place in Eretz Yisrael. But at the end of the day, Yaakov Avinu said to Yosef, when you die, I need you to stay in Egypt. I need you to continue to be a source of inspiration. I need you to be a source of strength, because no matter how bad things get in Egypt, the knowledge that Klal Yisrael has that Yosef HaTzadik is here with us will gird them with the strength they need in order to be able to weather the storm ahead. I need you to give up burial in Eretz Yisrael for the benefit of Klal Yisrael. This, says the Rebbe, was the message that Yaakov Avinu gave to his son. And as such, Yosef HaTzadik makes the ultimate sacrifice. He gives up a spot in Maras HaMachpelah. He gives up a spot in the Cave of the Patriarchs. He gives up a beautiful resting place in the holy city of Hebron. Why? To be with his children. Because sometimes what life demands of us is to make personal sacrifices for the benefit of our nation. You know, about a year ago, there was a precious neshama who was killed in Gaza, Captain Shaul Greenglick, who was 26 years old, of Renana. And this precious neshama, when he was on furlough, he was on a little bit of leave from the army. It was December 3rd of last year. And he performed on a show, an Israeli show called The Next Star. I guess it's like one of these talent shows. You know, you come on, you perform, and if they advance you, they don't advance you. Okay. See, he literally, again, he performed in his uniform. He was on break. He has a little break from the army. He came, he performed. He was a very talented young man. And he was advanced to the next stage. And he posted something incredible on Instagram. And I want to read to you what he posted. He said, Dimyanti es hashana hazot acheret. Said, I thought that this year, now remember again, understand, this is December of last year. So the war was a couple of months old. And this young man, bursting with talent, said, you know, at the beginning of the year, the beginning of last year, Tafshin Pei Dalet 5784, before October 7th, said, I thought that this year was going to be something different. Shana shal she'ifos v'hagshamas chalomos. I thought this was going to be a year of like learning, actualization of my dreams. But he says, Achshav ani chai chalom yashan lehilachem b'shvil haMedina. But now, I realize I have to have a different dream. And it's an old dream. And it's a dream about fighting for the state of Israel. V'anachnu kirega be'emtza halayla. And right now we're in the middle of a night. Remember again, December of last year. Chalom chadash va'acher yitztarech lechakot k'tzat. Says, my new dreams, they're going to have to wait a little bit. The new dreams will have to be put on the side. I hope that this present situation, this present reality quickly dissipates and moves on. Maftiach lamshich lehilachim ala medina hazot shani ohev v'gam ala chalomot shali ba'atid. Use reason his miftah. I promise to continue to fight for this country of ours that I love, and I promise to continue to fight for my future dreams. Kerega yesh rak davar echad b'rosh shali. But right now there's only one thing in my head. V'zeh lahamshich lehilachim b'choshech ad shenira et ha'ar. To continue to fight through the darkness until we see the light. Bezot histaimu she'dorenu la'ona krova. And only through this will we make it in Eretz Hashem to the next chapter. Captain Shaul Greenglick, 26 years old, Hashem Yikom Damo, who gave his life for Am Yisrael, for Eretz Yisrael, fighting in Gaza, had the incredible bravery and strength to put aside his own personal dreams for the benefit of the dreams of Klal Yisrael. So you ask yourself, where does a young man, 26 years old, get this level of idealism, this level of strength? And dear friends, it comes from Yosef HaTzadik. Because what did Yosef do? Yosef also put aside his own dreams. Yosef also put aside his own wants, his own needs, and his own desires. Yosef wanted to be buried in Eretz Yisrael, just like every Yid wants to live in Eretz Yisrael, be buried in Eretz Yisrael. Yosef also just wanted to find. Yosef had such a turbulent life. Yosef had such an overwhelming life, so much difficulty, so much pain, and all Yosef wanted, most probably at the end of his life, was to be buried in his ancestral homeland. And Yaakov Avinu, his beloved father, says, my dear son, I'm going to ask you for one more sacrifice. You've sacrificed so much. I'm going to ask you for one more. I'm going to ask you to put aside your personal dream for the benefit of the national dream. I'm going to ask you to give up that which you want because your people need you. Your nation needs you. Am Yisrael needs you. I know what you want. But what Klal Yisrael wants, what Klal Yisrael is going to need, is more important than right now. And this becomes the incredible koach of Yosef. And this becomes the koach which fuels us to this very day. The ability to make personal sacrifices for the national good. We've seen this throughout the last year. We've seen so much personal sacrifice, so much self-sacrifice. How many holy soldiers and how many precious young men and women have given their lives, Kedushas Hashem ha'am va'aretz, who have literally given up. You think about this. Here, I read you these few lines from this Captain Shaul Gringlich. Every single person who has perished over the course of this year-plus war, they all had their own dreams also. They all had their own aspirations also. Okay, maybe they didn't post on Instagram, maybe no one else ever knew about it, but there's no such thing as a person that doesn't have dreams for themselves. But they put their dreams on the side because the dream of Klal Yisrael, of peace, of light in the darkness, of bringing home our hostages, of bringing Shalom to Eretz Yisrael, those dreams meant more to them than their personal dreams. And so they're willing to sacrifice everything for the sake of their Klal, like Yosef HaTzadik. And therefore says the Rebbe, this is why the Chumash Bereshis, the parsha, ends with this. You're right, Tosa says, Mesaymen B'tov. We end off with good. This is good. It's painful good, but it's good. And it's the holiest of good. That Yosef HaTzadik teaching us that sometimes you have to be willing to make personal sacrifices for the benefit of the collective. Sometimes I have to think about my nation before I think about myself. Sometimes I have to think about my people before I think about serving my own personal interests. And therefore the Torah Kedosha purposely closes out this first book of the Torah with this incredible and dramatic and overwhelming lesson. The need that Yosef HaTzadik teaches us to sometimes set aside our personal needs for the sake of something bigger. Chevra, I think that this message resonates for us many different ways. For some of us, it's true in the context of family. Sometimes the need to put aside my own personal goals and aspirations or wants for the sake of my familial collective. Certainly if we're part of a kehillah, which hopefully we're all zochet to be part of something, the need that sometimes to be part of a kehillah, I have to put my own needs on the side in order to be able to go ahead and get done what needs to get done for the collective good. And sometimes just as part of Am Yisrael, everything we do impacts each other. Sometimes there are things I want to do that may not be great, or may not be good, or may not be spiritually healthy. And I have to be willing to give that up for the benefit of my people. We can all apply this message in different ways, but one thing is clear. The koach of Yosef, the strength of Yosef, pulses through our heart, beats in our heart, and pulses through our veins. That koach to sometimes put our own needs on the side and be able to think about the collective is a koach that Yosef had. A koach that Captain Gringlich Hashem Yikom Damo had, and a koach that each of us have as well. May we be zochem Eretz Hashem to find it, to activate it, to utilize it, to make a difference for ourselves and Eretz Hashem for our entire nation. Wishing everyone a good Erev Shabbos and a beautiful Shabbos Kodesh.